Shir LeYom HaShabbat. Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat. Mizmor Shir Shir LeYom HaShabbat. Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat.
יתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך גאותי וימליך מלכותי ויצמח מוכני ויקרב משיחי, בחיי חונו ויומי חונו וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתברך.
And a good Erev Shabbos. I'd like to dedicate all the words of Torah I'm about to say to the memory of my grandmother, Rachel bat Yitzchak Halevi. She died literally about a year plus before I was born, and I was never privileged to know her. But on her 49th yahrzeit, it's really a privilege to dedicate a few words of Torah to her memory. What I'm about to say, I said in my shul last Shabbos. So those that heard it, please nod your heads for a few minutes. I had 2 chidushim this week on it, so you'll hear it in a few moments. Those that didn't hear it, you can, of course, listen in more attentively. So it's a well-known thing that sometimes we come late to shul. And there are halachot in the code of Jewish law as to what to do. These halachot were not written for gangsters who can care less, but rather good Jews that sometimes, for valid reasons, come late to shul. So everybody knows the protocol during the week. You curtail your psuki dezimra a little bit in order to catch up and to say the blessings before and after the Shema and the silent Amidah with the congregation. But on Shabbos morning, the psuki dezimra is longer. And the question is, does the halacha stay the same? Do we follow the protocol of saying Baruch Shemar, skipping to Ashrei, only 2 Allelukas and Yishtabach? Or do we change it because Shabbos morning, the Psukei Dezimra, the Psalms of Praise before the blessings before the Shema, do change? So the halacha does change a bit. You start with Baruch Shemar, and then, instead of skipping to Ashrei, the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. I thank my dear friend, Rabbi Daniel Roslar, who's a Rav in London, for actually opening my eyes to the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, explicitly saying this, together with Rav Aaron Soloveitchik and others, say you have to say Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat, that famous psalm that ultimately happens to also be the psalm of the day for Shabbos. Then you say Ashrei, 2 Allelukas, and then you don't skip to Yishtabach, but you say Nishmat from beginning to end. The Chaye Adam, who was, by the way, a grocer in Vilna and wrote an amazing halachic work that everybody quotes. The Mishnah Berurah quotes it almost every page. The Chaye Adam, Rabbi Danzig, actually says that Nishmat is one long bracha. It starts from the word Nishmat and it ends at the end of Yishtabach. We know that from the Seder night. We don't just say Yishtabach on the Seder night. We start with Nishmat and we end with the end of Yishtabach, and that's called Birkat HaShir. As such, Shabbos morning, you can't just say Yishtabach, but you have to say the whole Nishmat. Incidentally, because it's one long bracha, you can't speak in the middle. You can't say Amelech HaYoshevak. You say Ram Ben Isa, hey, who wants to be Chazan? You want to be Chazan? Hey, you were Chazan last week. Absolutely inappropriate. It's like saying Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. Hey, how are you? Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. It's one long bracha. And therefore, the protocol that should be followed on a Shabbos morning, if you come late to shul and you want to catch up so you can say the blessings before and after the Shema and the silent Amidah with the Chazan, is very simple. Baruch Shemar, Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat, Ashrei, 2 Allelukas, Nishmat from beginning to end. What do we learn from this? What do we glean from this? I'd like to suggest we glean from it the following. Number 1, Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat and Nishmat are part and parcel of Psukei Dezimra. They're not add-ons. They're part and parcel of davening on Shabbos. My dear colleague, Rav Yehuda Rappaport, actually opened my eyes to a very simple proof to this. In Nusach Sfard and the Sfardim, they say many of the Psalms before Baruch Shemar. Baruch Shemar is sort of the beginning of Psukei Dezimra, because from that point until after Yishtabach you can't talk. It's like one long Psukei Dezimra. Well, what's the first psalm they say after Baruch Shemar? All the additional psalms of Shabbos, LeDavid B'Shanatot, Tfilah LeMoshe, Yoshev B'Seiter Elyon, all those are said prior. But the one psalm that's said afterwards is Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbos. And from this perspective, it obviously is a very good proof that since it's said after Baruch Shemar, it's part and parcel of Psukei Dezimra, as is Nishmat. Number 2, There's a big difference fundamentally between Nishmat and Mizmor Shir. Nishmat talks about being thankful to God for the last 6 days of the week. Namely, thank God we've had a lot of successes this week, unfortunately some failures, but we have to thank God for the successes as well as mourn the failures. I don't have to tell people that this particular week, after what we saw in the northern border of Israel, how we're just 30 kilometers from Damascus and without one casualty, that is definitely a miracle that we have to say, and anachnu maspikim lahodot lecha, Hashem Elokeinu ve'Elokei Avotenu, in Nishmat, this Shabbos. So Nishmat is to thank God for the present. But Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat doesn't really talk about Shabbos today. It talks about a future Shabbos, namely a Shabbos in the future, in the times of Mashiach, where there won't be any anti-Semitism. There will not be casualties of war. There won't be wounded in the hospitals anymore. It will be a beautiful time where we will be able to fulfill being Jews without those terrible, terrible tragedies on the side. How do I know that? Because at the end of davening on Shabbos, we don't just say that in the Beit HaMikdash, the Leviim used to say a Shir Shel Yom, a psalm of the day, every day. And we start saying, B'yom Rishon HaYomer, B'yom Sheni HaYomer. Finally, when we get to Shabbos, it doesn't say, B'Shabbat HaYu Omrim Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat. On Shabbat, they used to say the Psalm of Shabbat. No, it says, B'Shabbat HaYu Omrim. On Shabbat, they used to say, Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat. And then it goes on, Mizmor Shir LaAtid Lavo. A song for the future, LeYom SheKulo Shabbat u'Menucha L'chayei HaOlamim. For a time that will be a total Sabbath and rest for the Jewish people and forever. So in a word, Nishmat thanks God for the present. Mizmor Shir thanks God and hopes for the future. If there's anything a Jew needs to do on a Shabbos morning, when he gets to shul, and even if he gets to shul late, is he has to acknowledge past, present, and future. Past, Baruch Shemar v'haya olam. Blessed be God, who once upon a time, just with his mouth, created this world in 6 days. Past. Present, Nishmat, thanking God for the present. And finally, Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat, looking forward to a much better time in the future. So even when you're pressed for time on a Shabbos morning, there has to be past, present, and future. Without it, our Shabbos morning davening is flawed. From this perspective, as we go into Shabbos this week, I hope and pray that we'll be able to not only thank God for the past and the present, but hopefully get much closer to the future than we've ever been before. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and Besorot Tovot.
Yom SheKulo, Yom SheKulo, Yom SheKulo Shabbos. Yom SheKulo, Yom SheKulo, Yom SheKulo Shabbos. Yom SheKulo, Yom SheKulo, Yom SheKulo Shabbos. Oy oy tararam, oy oy tarariraram, tarariraram, tiriraram, oy oy yom, oy oy tararam, oy yom taram tiraram.